Almost everything you've ever touched, sat on, or walked over is younger than what I'm about to tell you. Empires have turned to dust. Languages have died. And even the ground beneath your feet is shifted. But there's one thing that remains exactly where it was, maybe even 10,000 years ago. Orion, the hunter. To the ancient Greeks, a giant. To the Egyptians, a sign of their gods. And to medieval Arabic astronomers, well, the belt was just a string of pearls, but we'll get to that. We call it a constellation, but I think that's too general in the stories it tells. But anyway, let me tell you another story. Ever since I was a kid, the first gained my consciousness. My head was always like this, because I love the stars. And it was a cold and clear night, and Orion was right there, balls out and everything. And I was staring at it with drool coming out of my mouth, my comically large lollipop, and my propeller hat lightly blown by the wind. And as I stared at the belt, I saw a bright streak flash just below it, and I was dumbfounded, drool still dripping out. Then I saw another flash, but not really a streak. Anyway, not sure if it was a shooting star, or if I stared so long I started to hallucinate flashes. But stars and space aren't the only thing I love. Oh, no. No, I also really like random parts of history. I was told in plenty in school about the history of the last 100 to 150 years, and maybe a bit of a shallow look into the Roman Empire, before looking more at the world wars, which we did maybe 20-30 times.
I think it was probably around 95, 96, was it? 94, 95, 96? No, 95, 96, I'd say 97, around that.
But our history lessons were always on the same topics and never more on history beyond Europe or the world wars. Which, I mean, honestly fair. If I won a war, that would also be the only history I teach in a school founded by a king born before anyone even alive today. Yeah, I mean, if you won a war, you'd probably do the same thing. Two things that have held each other by the balls for as long as we've been around. The guiding light of humans, in a sense. And I learnt the stars tell the stories of humanity too. But like I said, there's one constellation I've always seen since I was a kid. Orion. And maybe the first I've seen. I'm not a historian, not an astronomer, but you're going to sit here and listen because I know you haven't stepped outside the house today, and this is going to be the first time you see anything about outside. So, let's talk about Orion first. Not the constellation, but Orion. The constellation itself, you could say, is one of the 28 lunar mansions in China. Or maybe the Egyptians linking many of their gods. But most famously, the Greek tale of Orion. In Greek mythology, he's described as a gigantic, extraordinarily strong hunter. He's mentioned in quite a few works, including one of the oldest surviving works of Greek mythology, dating back to around the 7th century BC, which is currently being made a movie of today, Homer's Odyssey, where in that he's still a constellation and a shade in the underworld. It's me from slightly in the future. I just want to say, I'm not actually entirely sure about the constellation part, but I do know that he was a hunter with a bronze club in the underworld of Homer's Odyssey, so I'm just going to leave that in anyway. Thank you. That's still hunting beasts. Although the fact is mentioned here without an origin probably implies that he's been around for far longer through oral tradition, and probably why he has a lot of conflicting stories, as you'll see. He was the son of Poseidon, and what do you associate Poseidon with? Maybe Neptune, but what do you associate him with? That's right, the sea. So he could maybe walk on water. Others say he was born in a strange way from the earth, as in Zeus, Poseidon and Hermes pissed on a bull's hide, which emphasized his immense strength. So, as with a lot of ancient mythologies and their heroes, Orion was part mortal, part not. Kinda like Kratos. He was famed as an absolute monster of a hunter, a giant huntsman, but he was so good, he would obviously have immense pride to match it. And as such, Orion became arrogant to the point of he boasted he could kill every animal on earth, to which Gaia was not happy, so she sent a giant scorpion to kill him. That's the constellation known as Scorpius. Another is that he was killed by Artemis's arrow after Apollo's trickery, or he attempted to assault her. The Apollo story goes he was unhappy that his sister was getting so close to Orion, and so he tricked her into killing him. But the most famous ending, which leads to the name of the constellation, is that Zeus placed both Orion and the Scorpion in the sky as constellations, positioned on opposite sides so that one rises and the other sets, never to meet again. And apparently his hunting dogs are also placed as Canis Major and Minor. Orion is one of the easiest constellations to spot, if not the easiest. It was also the first constellation that I spot, and I thought it looked like an hourglass before I saw the other stars. In the winter in the northern hemisphere, you'll probably see in the east if you're in the UK. Go on, go outside, look at the sky. You can turn this off now if you want. Even if it's the day, just do it, it'll make you happy. The belt, one of the more famous parts of the constellation, can be used to point directly to Aldebaran and the Pleiades. But let's talk about what's actually in the belt. Al-Nitak, the girdle. Al-Nilam comes from Al-Nitam, the string of pearls. And Mintaka, also something about a belt. You'll notice there's something very Arab about all those names. And the reason I've told you these is just to show you how influential this is across cultures. Constellation named after a Greek mythological hero, with his own legend in and of itself. But the stars in its belt are a string of pearls based around Arabs, based around the Islamic Golden Age, and I guess it does kind of make sense with the Islamic Golden Age and all. And the next most distinctive star, if not the most distinctive, is Betelgeuse, which if you look at Orion right now, you'll notice a big red star on its shoulder that, if it were our sun, would extend past Jupiter's orbit. Not armpit, orbit. And as you know, our sun is obviously a galaxy. Belu and Zaius. Also, when you're a child and first feel the existential dread of knowing our sun will blow up, knowing Betelgeuse is far closer to that is pretty cool, because it means you'll see a star blow up. If you live to a few million years, but I don't know, maybe I'll do it, I'll try. But the one thing I see people rarely mention is the Orion Nebula, or M42. At least not so many. It's a stellar nursery in one of the closest, largest star-forming regions to Earth, and some refer to it as where the sword would hang from, so there's a bit of irony in that. Anyway, Orion isn't just Greek. Medieval Muslim astronomers named many of the stars and are names we still use today. It was also known as Al-Jabbar, the giant. The star Saif is named from the Arabic Saif al-Jabbar, the sword of the giant. Ancient Egypt actually had a different story, seeing the stars of Orion as their god Sa, and directly linked it to Osiris. Of course, there's mentions of Babylonian records, obviously. One's calling it the shepherd of Anu. Anu being the chief god of heavenly realms. In ancient Aram, the Nephilim were said to be Orion's descendants, the Nephilim being the spawn of fallen angels and humans, I believe. India has a lot of interpretations which are too confusing for me, so I'm not going to go through them. And in European folklore there's a lot. Hungary it's known as just the archer. Ireland and Scotland call it Anbodach, meaning the one with a penis. The belt in Scandinavia is known as Frigg's Distaff. I won't keep going on about European folklore, but it's important to note there's a lot of weapon imagery for Orion in European folklore, and they all kind of align with the original Greek story. There's also a lot more in Austronesian tales, but I just wanted to show you how different cultures see the same constellation for millennia, and each have made their own distinctive stories, while also making the stars a map of their tales and journeys. For example, Sirius could be found using the belt of Orion, and Sirius typically rose close to true south, which would be vital for sailors, assuming they're not looking at it upside down in the southern hemisphere. Even still, you could use it the same way. There's also a sign of winter, or seasonal change, because Orion typically comes around in the winter. So, while Orion may be the most simple constellation to spot for most, maybe even just a simple navigation tool in the sky for beginner astronomers like myself. To some, it doesn't appear immediately as constellations, but Orion has been important to humanity for so long, for as long as we've recorded history. Tens of thousands of years, billions of people, and many cultures. People migrate, cultures change, technology evolves, but Orion stayed. The same Orion that, man may have gazed upon thousands of years ago is the same Orion that sits in the night sky today, the powerful hunter eternally chased by the scorpion. So, maybe the air you breathe is different, the clothes you wear are different, the buildings you live in are different, the work you do is different, the ground you walk on is different, but the stars, they don't change. Every night you look up, you more than likely see the same stars in the same constellations as a person may have gazed upon 5,000 years ago, and maybe they stood where you stood. Maybe there's a star that's just that bit brighter, or redder, or twinkles more. And then you start seeing a shape, and humanity's already made 1,000 stories of it before you breathed even your first breath. So even when everything around you seems to change, just look up on a clear night